Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub. Welcome to another L'Chaim Roundtable. We're taping in the immediate aftermath of the elections of 2016. Again, Donald Trump is now the president-elect. He'll be the 45th president of the United States. And he'll also be working with a Republican Senate and a Republican House of Representatives. If you were with us for part one of this discussion, you heard our guests discuss just their own reactions to the Trump win. On this edition of L'Chaim, on this roundtable, we want to address the questions: what does this all mean for the American Jewish community, and what does it mean for the relationship between the State of Israel and the United States when we have a Trump administration? Let me introduce or reintroduce my guests to you. Steven Bayme is the director of the Contemporary Jewish Life Department of the American Jewish Committee and the director of the AJC's Koppelman Institute on American Jewish Israeli Relations. Thane Rosenbaum is a distinguished fellow at NYU Law School. He's the director of the Forum on Law, Culture, and Society, and he's an award-winning essayist and novelist whose most recent work is entitled How Sweet It Is, the story of Jewish life in Miami in the watershed year of 1972. Ken Bobb is the national president of the progressive American Zionist organization Ameinu, and Ken also chairs the American Zionist movement. And joining us again, this is her first trip to JBS, but it's her second show on L'Chaim now, Barbara Fix, a passionate Zionist from South Africa, who many of you may know from her weekly radio program on WVOX in Westchester. And again, I thank you all so much for being with us. All right, we were going to talk about what's a Trump administration going to mean, especially for the American-Israeli relationship. This is, again, an issue, an area you deal with all the time. So you kick it off. What do you think it's going to mean now that the Obama administration is coming to an end and we have a Trump administration?
There's good evidence to say that Trump is a sincere friend of Israel. And in that respect, at least on the surface, one would look for a closer relationship between the two governments. Reality is, though, to be blunt about it, is that it's very difficult to predict that. First of all, we have the famous political statement, where you stand depends upon where you sit. The late Rick Sharon actually put it when he was talking about disengagement. Right. What you see from here is not what you see from there. So for starters, I'm not at all sure that Trump's pro-Israel statements, as welcome as they were during the campaign, I don't know how they're going to necessarily be translated. Second, which is more important to me, frankly, because I think that'd be true of any candidate. In other words, before you make predictions, don't just look at where they've been. But Trump's foreign policy team remains an enigma. And in that sense, again, the overall contours of what he may like is not necessarily what's going to be implemented once he actually gets around to appointing a serious team assigned or charged with the implementation of policy. Third, I don't think it's any secret that a two-state solution does not appear to be on the immediate horizon. Chances of success in it are not very good. Now, frankly, again, AJC right now as we speak is reaffirming its commitment to the two-state solution because we see it as the best hope, as flawed as it is, as problematical as it is. It's the best hope for preserving and sustaining a Jewish democracy. But if the expectation is that the president will be forthright and aggressive in terms of trying to come up with another Kerry mission or things of that nature, I tend to be quite skeptical because he himself knows it's unlikely. And in some respects, he's got a much larger agenda that more Americans are interested in. And this leads me to probably the last point, is that the real evaluation, I think, of Trump will be to what extent is he dedicated and committed to maintaining America's international role. In other words, the U.S. Israel relationship presupposes a robust American foreign policy in which America really feels responsibility for what's going on elsewhere. An America that says, you boys work it out on your own, we have no interest in it, that's not going to be good for Israel, it's not going to be good for the Middle East, it's certainly not going to be good for international relations.
And when you say that, what are you thinking America should say in terms of the Middle East, and especially as it applies to Israel? What should America do?
Right now, trying to impose a solution is a mistake. And in that respect, I think that's always been one of the problems the Jewish community has had, going back to days of President Nixon, that the assumption was that somehow or other a deus ex machina, some God coming out of the White House, could impose a solution. That's not going to happen. A solution will take place only when both sides are committed to it. America can play a great role in helping that take place.
How?
Number one, preserving some level of communication on all sides, a certain recognition that America's interest in the Middle East is much larger than the state of Israel. Let's get rid of the notion that if somehow you solve the Israeli problem, all of America's problems in the Middle East would disappear. But thirdly, and I think most importantly, America needs to reaffirm its support for a stable, secure Israel, in which America will have Israel's back, if you will, to use one of Obama's phrases. And that would give the Israelis a lot more self-confidence about it. At the same time, America has to be very strong to the fire of holding the Palestinian Authority accountable for its actions. It needs to be very clear about that Hamas can play no role in a peace process, given its theological rejection of Israel's very right to exist. So that means an assertive America, even in the recognition that major solutions are not easily within reach. At a minimum, we have to make sure we don't do things to make things worse. And in that respect, with the best of intentions, theoretically we could make things worse, and we've been down that road as well.
Okay. There have been times you have been very critical of the Obama administration's treatment of Israel. First of all, you can react in any way you want to what Steve said, and then I also want to know from you, what do you expect or what do you hope out of a Trump administration in terms of the American-Israeli relationship?
Well, waking up this morning, many Americans are looking to see when this wall is going to be built for Mexico. But there are other Americans that are wondering whether the American embassy in Israel is going to be moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Trump made a lot of what he would consider to be very strong pro-Israel statements. The Iran deal, he said, is the worst deal ever negotiated. Believe me, he said, it's the worst deal ever. And let me tell you, in addition to undoing Obamacare, this was another thing he was going to do, undo the Iran deal and negotiate a better one. Trump is unlikely ever in his lifetime to engage in the kind of conciliatory gestures that we saw in the Obama administration toward Arab countries, Muslim countries in the Middle East. Remember the Cairo speech that Obama did, and then gave the speech in Cairo, did not go to Israel.
And said Israel was necessary because of the Holocaust.
Right,
as opposed to realization of Zionist dreams.
Exactly, as if he, and for all of it, it's a complicated relationship with Obama because, you talk to many Israelis and they said, he was amazing. The amount of aid that was given to Israel, the military and intelligence sharing and defense maneuvers that were conducted simultaneously. But I think it's clear that that Obama doesn't love Israel. He doesn't have feelings for it. And I think he does have a kind of anti-colonial sensibility and a sympathy for the Arab world that was manifest in his administration. And Trump doesn't. Trump said two different things that are troubling and good. The one thing he said about foreign policy is that, a lot of places the United States shouldn't be involved in at all. He appealed to an isolationist side of American foreign policy. On the other hand, in his admiration for Putin and his other things, is he was arguing for a more muscular foreign policy. Instead of red lines not being crossed, instead of leading from behind, that America really had been in eclipse or in withdrawal during the Obama administration. Obama said, this just drove me nuts, I don't believe in American exceptionalism. Well, I do. I definitely believe. I think if you want to compare America straight up to Syria and all the other countries in the Middle East, yes, we are exceptional. Israel should believe in an Israeli exceptionalism instead of what they see in the neighborhood. So Obama had a much more egalitarian sense of all countries are really the same. They're good, they're bad. No, no, no. I actually believe that you should be able to make a critical judgment. Many countries are simply bad, and some countries are there with the virtue and for the good. And so the question there will be, will America show up in a much more muscular way in its foreign policy as a source of good? This is sort of the neoconservatives' position, that America should always be a beacon of freedom and hope, and that what we saw in the Obama administration was a tentative administration when it came to what can American foreign policy accomplish? What could we really accomplish? I do think at the end, Obama really had hoped that he would bring some peace to the Middle East. It's hard to see because his relationship with Netanyahu was so horrible. It's hard to know whether, I think he thought that he wasn't getting any help out of Abbas and that there was a lot of endless self-sabotage within the Palestinian community. But I also think he thought he didn't have a partner in the prime minister's office. I just think that these ambitions are not Trump's ambitions. I don't think Trump thinks that it's his job to bring peace to the Middle East. I think this is where his isolationist points will fall. But I do think, and I don't think he has any of the kinds of sensitivities to the anti-colonial strain of what we saw with Obama and this natural sympathies to the Palestinians. I don't think he has that. But I do think what you'll see with him is a much more, and this is not because of Jared Kushner, and it's not because he has a Jewish grandchild. I think he sees Israel in the way American Jews see Israel. I think he says, here's one democracy, and the rest of the countries are not. Here's a real ally, and these countries are not real allies. And I think that to that degree, I think that will be a huge improvement in terms of Israeli-American relations.
Okay. So you've heard now two perspectives, and I know you have a different view of this, and it's very important that we get to hear what you see as either the benefit or the liability of a Trump administration vis-a-vis Israel.
So first of all, I just want to comment a little bit on Thane's characterization of President Obama's foreign policy vis-a-vis Israel in the Middle East. I don't want to spend too much time on it because that's not the purpose of the show. I had an opportunity to spend quite a bit of time with the president over the last 8 years, being a supporter of his administration within the Jewish community. And I can frankly share with your audience that he has deep feelings about Israel and about the Jewish people. One of the stories we like to tell is in his first run for Congress against sitting Congressman Bobby Rush. One of the reasons why he's lost because he was viewed as being the Jewish candidate. He was supported by the Jewish community. And some of those people from the Jewish community of Chicago with him along the ways, I think can really attest. People who took their first trip to Israel with him and were in the White House, will be in the White House to the last day with him, view him as a true friend of Israel and of the Jewish people, and not of Bibi Netanyahu. That's true. And they had a very troubled relationship. And as someone said recently, someone central in the Jewish community said, the relationship has to be rebuilt, and it's going to take both sides. And I think that's true. And so I think that I don't accept the complete criticism of President Obama's foreign policy towards the Middle East. And I think the role of the United States in the world has changed. And Trump is not going to be able to put it back where it was 8 years ago. I think that's just a fantasy. I don't think he wants to. Some of the very same neoconservative Jewish think tankers who refused to support Trump because they viewed his isolationist foreign policy as flawed were the same people who were central supporters of George Bush's administration. So I think this notion of Obama did this and Obama did that, I think actually the world changed and the Arab Spring happened, and we can't deny that it happened, and the United States didn't invent it and didn't control it, and maybe at some point misplayed it. So I'm not defending everything that this administration did. A lot of it was beyond their control, specifically about Israel. Interesting comment I heard over the last couple of days from a leading Republican strategist who has spent time with Trump. He said, I would suggest, even with a Jewish daughter and a Jewish grandchild and a Jewish son-in-law, he doesn't have a deep personal commitment to Israel as a George W. Bush did or a Bill Clinton did. It's not part of his life, as it was with those two men. And so actually they think his personal connection to Israel is not very deep. They think that he may indeed develop over time. We talked earlier about what happens when you sit in the chair of the presidency. But right now, this person didn't think that he really has that deep connection. Secondly, they think he will like Netanyahu. And one reason is because he likes strong leaders. When they talk about even when he speaks about his admiration for Putin, he thinks they'll have a similar admiration for Netanyahu. So people expect them to get along well. Another thing I would say, I would agree that he's not going to pursue peace between Israel and Palestine. There's no real reason for him to do that, both because the track record isn't very good of his predecessors, and second of all, it's not number 1 or 2 on the agenda. I think, however, and this is really up to the Israelis, a change in Israeli government, a change in Israeli policy, pursuing a two-state solution, I think Trump would actually find it very attractive to try to help because he's all about the deal. And if he could be the one who brought Middle East peace, I think he would love that. So I think I would see he would step back from that until there's a reason to engage. But again, things change and things happen. I think that what's going to be interesting in how it plays out in American politics is that I'm a believer, as you know, that I think a two-state solution is critical for the Israeli people, not for the United States. And I'm not taking the Palestinian thing. It's important for the Israeli people so they can have a Jewish democratic state. And that has continued to play out in American politics. I think people may know, with the rising support of J Street in this last cycle, they endorsed 125 candidates for the House and Senate. They have a significant two-state solution lobby within a Republican Congress, absolutely. But it's going to be vocal and it's going to be noticeable, and this is going to be an ongoing conversation both in American politics and in the Jewish community.
Okay, and bottom line for you then, would you say on balance, it is good for the Jews that we have a Trump administration, or are you concerned and worried for the Jews because we have a Trump administration vis-a-vis Israel?
Look, I think the jury is out, is what I'm saying. We don't know what his policies are going to be. I do want to touch upon Iran, which I think is a very important issue and a very interesting issue. As Thane mentioned, it's the worst deal ever. I'm going to redo this deal. I'm going to negotiate a better deal. That is a very complicated question. Just unpack it a little bit. The deal's in place. Now, some people can say it's not working and this or that. The fact is, Iran doesn't have a bomb right now. We know that. That's a fact that everyone agrees on, even if they think it's a bad deal. Iran doesn't have a bomb now. So what does Trump go about doing? As we know, the reason why this deal even came together is because there was international sanctions against Iran, including China and Russia and all of Europe. None of them want to undo the deal. They're all happy with the deal. So to go undo the deal means the U.S. is undoing a deal that will now give Iran carte blanche to develop a bomb. And now we're going to have an isolationist president. Does he want another war in the Middle East? So I'm not sure how this is going to play out. I really don't know. I've read articles already this morning suggesting the first thing he's doing is going to undo the deal with Iran. But as I think Steve said, he's going to bring in a team of national security, foreign policy, defense, and they're going to have to figure this out.
Yes. By the way, I do want a yes or no answer. I don't want to discuss it. Yes or no, Trump's going to change the deal with Iran?
I don't think so.
Yes or no, he's going to change the deal with Iran?
I'll go back to what I said about the wall.
Yes or no?
If he builds the wall, if
yes
he really
or
feels
no?
that...
Yes or no?
No.
Yes or no, he's going to change
I
the
cannot
deal?
answer the question. Because it's complicated.
Okay,
It's not
yes
only
or
nuclear,
no?
it's money as well.
It's okay. You can't answer it. Can't. Yes or no?
Unpredictable.
Okay, and for me, there's no question he's not going to. I don't know if he's going to build a wall. I think all of that was posture.
But his
And
people
let me just
don't
finish.
believe that.
They're going to learn.
They're
They're
going to
gonna-
be
By the way,
really
Trump
mad.
is not an idiot. He may be flawed in many ways. He's not an idiot. He said things that, by the way, it's not like he was lying, I don't believe. I believe he said things that represented a general
Yes, a
feeling.
worldview, right.
Yes. But the things he said specifically, he's not going to ban Muslims. He's not going to build a wall.
But he
He's
energized an entire
doesn't ma-
community
does-
of people.
He's now president. And all of you have said, we all agree, he's going to have a team. He's going to have to play within a certain boundary. I'm just saying to you.
You're saying you don't. All of those big
Yes.
ticket campaign
Yes.
promises.
Not one.
Obamacare.
Not in,
Iran.
By the way,
Obamacare.
Right, all of this.
He's not going to eliminate Obamacare.
Mark, he's a very strong character. He's a very strong person.
I'm giving you only my sense.
But
My
he's
sense
going
is
to make some
that-
major changes.
Yes, He will make changes.
He's going to
By the
make
way,
major changes.
life
And
doesn't
Israel
work
is
that
not
way.
his concern right now.
Life
It's domestic.
doesn't work that way.
Domestic is his concern
That is
right
correct.
now. But,
by the way,
you know,
I want him
disagree,
to.
and
I want
need
him
to
to
jump
build
in
the
because I
roads.
need to agree
I
or
want him to
disagree
build
with
the
people.
highways. I want him to build
He's
the
going
air.
to do that because
okay.
jobs are the issue.
That
and he's
is
going to
correct.
But
But
let's
he's
talk
not-
about foreign policy.
Okay,
because
I will come to you in a minute. I'm just saying to all of you, those of you who say no, I think you're 100% right. Those of you who don't know, I think you're going to see that you were wrong.
Complicated.
It's
Sanctions,
not-
yes.
The reason
Money,
I said
no.
unpredictable is what I said before. We don't know who his people are. If you asked
The Iran deal is not going to be changed.
What
if
about
you ask
Lebanon?
David
And, what about
Finkelstein, who
Lebanon and Hezbollah? We need to talk about that.
Can I just finish a second? I believe is one of his Middle East advisors, Israel advisors, David Finkelstein. I don't know him well. I'm willing to, bet my entire house mortgage that he is vigorously opposed to the Iran deal.
I agree.
David Friedman, no?
David Friedman, I'm
Right,
sorry.
right.
I knew it was with an F anyway. Until we have a sense of who is really going to be the resident experts on the Middle East inside the Trump team, I think any predictions
Okay, fair.
are very, very
Okay,
difficult.
He
I
wants the
just want to go.
ambassadorship
I
anyways.
want to go on record that Bowie, it is possible the deal could be modified, but he's not throwing the deal out and starting again, and he's not building a wall the way he says he's going to build a wall, and he's not going to keep Muslims out of America. These were things that were sentiments, which in fact he, I believe, believed. But he is not going to come. He's not king of America. He's president of America. Okay. I need you to answer now the question that's on the table. The question is, how do you see a Trump administration vis-a-vis Israel? Good for Israel, not good for Israel? How do you see it
I
overall?
see it excellent for Israel. We've got a real problem with the United Nations. There's been rhetoric all the time about what Obama's going to do with the United Nations. Is the United Nations going to be the arbiter of whether there's a two-state solution or not a two-state solution? That's an elephant in the room. Iran is not an elephant in the room in its isolationist sense. It's providing the weaponry that are sitting on the Litani River, trained into Israel, that can be simultaneously fired at all levels, the whole of Israel. I mean, if Greenblatt and Friedman have their way and are the advisors, things are going to happen for the better. Settlements. Obama comes in. There was silence about settlements before Obama comes in. 8 years ago, settlements become the issue. I don't think Obama even understands. Settlements are really suburbs. What is the definition of a settlement? Suburbs, where people are needing to have housing, needing to build, needing to extend. Their children need housing. We're not talking about the hilltop settlements, which is a different view of, they shouldn't even have the same term. These are all issues. Moving the embassy is not a big deal. I don't think that's a big deal to move it. Maybe that's the first thing they'll start. It's a building to a building. It's easy enough to move. So maybe he'll do that as a token. He'll drop the idea of settlements. He's not going to force a two-state solution at this point, because the whole thing, everything moved from the time of Bill Clinton, when Barack offered everything and it was rejected, 96% was rejected. Times have changed. We've moved on. Also, the Arabs don't care as much about the Palestinian issue. The Arab League doesn't care. It's not center. There's so much upheaval because of the so-called Arab Spring or Arab Winter that there's a proxy war in Yemen between the Sunnis and the Shiites. There's a problem with Saudi Arabia aligned with Egypt, and they're not aligned with Egypt, now aligning with Russia. It's the shifting sands. There's tribalism. There's clans. You know, the Middle East is so complicated. It's not as simple as Americans see it. It's multifaceted. So am I optimistic about Trump? I think Trump, just the way he picked Mike Pence, I think he picked, somebody, I think his choice of advisors will be what will determine everything. And I'm a very great optimist. I'm very optimistic for him. Yes, we look how the Israeli prime ministers come in and shift totally. Menachem Begin came in, shifted. Ariel Sharon came in and shifted. Will there be a shift? Probably. Are we talking about the first year that happens, or are we talking about the fourth year or the eighth year that happens? Yes, you get molded by circumstance. We come in as idealists, and all his idealism will obviously have to fit in with, can he repeal Obamacare in one day, in 1 month, in 1 year? No, but he'll have to work with Obamacare and change that. And I think that domestic policy will be his focus and not foreign policy for now. But he inherits a quagmire of issues in the Middle East. I mean, from Egypt to Saudi Arabia to Yemen to the relationship with Russia to the Kurds. We haven't even discussed the Kurdish issue. That's a tragedy for me. For me, one of the healthy things would be you get the Kurds, boots on the ground is such a title. We won't do boots on the ground. We'll get the Kurds to do our dirty work. Now, what about giving the Kurds their land? They're more entitled to it than the Palestinians. But you know what? Then that affects our relationship with Turkey. What's going to happen with the relationship with Turkey? How's he going to negotiate that? There's so many, it's such a multifaceted situation. We don't know. But I'm an optimist. I believe that the 8 previous years, we created a situation, an explosive situation in the Middle East. And he has to come and calm it down in some ways. When he says, make America great again, I get the message that we need America to be respected. Not because America is a colonialist power. We are the peacekeepers. We do good in the world. We're a democratic country. We're democratic. We almost have to we need to rebuild the military so that we are deterrent power to everybody else, so that everybody else is, in a way, respectful. You know, to hand Russia on a platter, that Russia can control airspace and we can't have safe spaces for the Syrian people. What a tragedy. Does anybody care about the Syrian people? There were so many mistakes made in this administration. 2009 in Iran. Support the uprising. We wouldn't have had what we have in Iran. The initial uprising in Syria. I mean, Syria, Sykes-Picot agreement. Look at it. It's a combination of a Shiite minority and a Sunni majority. Divide it up and get that done. I mean, we're in a very bad place at the moment with Syria, where it's a lose-lose situation. On the one hand, Bashar Assad stays where he is. On the other hand, and you defeat ISIS. Or the other side is that ISIS rises, and Syria is a real problem. I think that's one of the issues that he has to really deal with.
Okay, you wanted to comment?
Well, I just one corrective. I don't think it's that important. Opposition to settlements did not begin with Barack Obama. Every American administration, going back to Lyndon Johnson, was opposed to settlements on the West Bank. Now, the importance of it is not just to correct the historical record. The importance of it is that Israel's international position, including within the United States, is badly misunderstood because of our lack of sympathy for it, because neither Americans nor Europeans understand the need for settlements or endorse them or embrace them as a matter of policy. The difference, I think, right now between Barack Obama and Bibi Netanyahu is that there was a fundamental clash over this, and Netanyahu stood his ground, basically. I don't think you'll see nearly as fundamental a clash, but as soon as Trump takes office, and as soon as he has a team, including foreign policy experts who've labored in these vineyards for years, they're going to tell him, we support Israel, but we do not support Israel's conquests. And the settlements, every single settlement makes...
I resent the word of conquest, I have to say. I don't see it as a conquest.
Conquered in war. That's a matter of record. You know, Israel conquered the land in a matter of war. I mean, that's...
Then it's theirs to do what they choose?
I didn't say that either. What I said is simply the record of the Six-Day War is that Israel was not in possession of certain territories. The war took place, and Israel was in possession. That's a matter of conquest. But what I really was going to say is something...
By the way, the problem is
Yeah.
conquest suggests that Israel was out to get something. This was a defensive war.
Fair enough, but every war has resulted in territories being conquered in one form or another.
But you understand what the word conquest suggests. It's not a good choice of
Israel
words.
found itself in possession of territories that it tried to stay out of. In other
And
words,
not only that-
an offer was made to King Hussein,
Okay.
stay away from
That's
it.
correct. And by the way, what happens in Khartoum in September of 1967?
No negotiations, no recognition, no peace.
In response to what?
An Israeli
Levi
offer,
Eshkol offers to give it all back.
with the exception of
And
Jerusalem.
then what happens in 1988?
Tell me what happens in 1967.
No, he's right. I'm saying, and then move forward 20 years, and the PLO recognized Israel and said, let's negotiate. time moved on. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
But
and by
look,
the way,
I think
the
the
PLO
point,
has not changed its charter to this day.
let's not go there. We've had
Let's
this
not go.
conversation.
You don't like it?
No,
So we
'cause-
don't go there?
No, because you really want. That's what you want to do with this
No,
discussion
no,
today is discuss the
but I
PLO
wouldn't
charter.
have brought up 88. I wouldn't have said that.
Do you not accept the Palestinians recognize Israel?
I do not. I definitely
then,
do not.
Look,
You think that Mahmoud Abbas recognizes Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state?
forget the Jewish state part. I didn't say that. I said recognize Israel.
But that's what it is.
Look,
Look at the map.
that we
Look
can
at the
that we
maps
can
they
talk
draw.
about too.
Okay, but go back to your point.
The point I think Steve makes a very interesting point about what's going to happen around this issue with settlements, and is this U.S. government going to follow tradition back to Johnson's time? It's funny about moving the embassy. Every Republican president
Correct.
had said we're going to move the embassy.
Absolutely.
So
It's not
it's
moving.
not just moving a building.
It's not
with all
moving.
due respect. It's not just moving a building.
He's
It's
not
an
building a
international
wall,
thing.
he's not
Is
moving
that
a
what he's?
building.
If we don't think he's going to want to engage himself particularly in this issue right now, why would he try to antagonize all the NATO allies that he's now going to go make nice to after his statements in the campaign that Mark says he didn't mean? You know, so now he's going to go make nice to NATO. The last thing he's going to do is, oh, by the way, I'm moving this building into Jerusalem where none of you recognize as the capital of Israel. He's not going to do it. I would be shocked if he did it, to be honest.
I would too.
The settlement issue is very interesting, though, because what was the big statement out of Israel this morning? Naftali Bennett, the head of the Jewish Home Party and the right-wing thorn in the side of Netanyahu, said, great, two-state solution is over.
Yeah.
That was his announcement. This election means the two-state solution is over. I would be surprised, again, if President Trump, on day one of his administration, announced the two-state solution is over, I'm changing U.S. policy. Who was the first president to talk about two-state solution? George W. Bush, not even Clinton. Clinton was negotiating it at Camp David, but actually, near the end of his administration, George W. Bush, together with Condi Rice, were at Annapolis. I was demonstrating for peace outside in favor of George W. Bush in Annapolis with the Progressive Zionist group, and we said, go for it, Condi. And he said, two-state solution, border adjustments, exactly what we talk about now, was put into language by George W. Bush. I don't think President Trump is going to undo that. I think that's going to remain American policy, and I think, as I think Steve was suggesting, his State Department folks are going to remind Israel that's still American policy.
By the way, do we all remember the very first thing he said about Israel?
Yes.
What was the first
Even-handedness.
thing? Even-handedness.
Wait a second,
Where did he
was
get in
his
trouble
first
for
thing
that?
he said.
I think he was treated unfairly. He meant something very different
You're
than the way it
right,
was
but
interpreted.
that's what he said.
But let's get the record straight on it. What he said specifically was, were negotiations to proceed,
Correct.
Right.
if both parties were really serious about moving forward, America will not be able to do the job unless it creates some distance between itself and the respective
He
parties.
didn't use the word distance.
I hope
what he
not,
said
because
was,
that's even worse.
What he said was, everything else you heard says, what he said was that America must appear to be even-handed.
Fair enough. That's
what he said.
And
That's
he
what I
got
meant.
blasted by the...
Yes, by the way, and he went to AIPAC and changed it. But that was his
That was not a
first
great
stand.
appearance either for him.
Oh, I thought he did very well.
Do you not remember that the next morning the AIPAC leadership had to scold him?
Yeah, but they didn't scold
Oh,
him.
they scolded his
They
supporters.
scolded the
His
supporters.
supporters.
That's
Right,
right.
exactly.
They did not scold.
We did a show on that.
Right, and I was surprised. I thought AIPAC made a serious mistake. The reaction. By the way, what you had at AIPAC was, lo and behold, Trump got a standing ovation when he sort of gave it to Obama.
Right.
And AIPAC was embarrassed.
Well, the giving it to Obama was inappropriate.
What did they think he was going to do?
Well,
This is a quintessential who Trump is. He says what everybody's thinking. The reason he got a standing ovation from people who never in a million years would vote for him. In a million years they wouldn't vote for him.
I
They
don't think
stood
you're right.
and cheered.
I would
I
suggest
know
that
them. I know them.
I think the AIPAC crowd has moved significantly to the right over the years, and you'd be surprised. I think you had a lot of voters in that room that day.
I
think AIPAC's going to be a very comfortable place for Trump. I have no question.
Yes.
I'm not arguing that point.
Yes. I think the people who try to paint AIPAC as if it's monolithically right-wing.
I didn't say monolithic. I said
Okay.
moved.
Okay.
That's different. There's range at AIPAC, absolutely. But I think the liberal wing of AIPAC is much, much smaller than it ever
AIPAC's
was.
done a wonderful job in recruiting Orthodox supporters, and they've done better than any other Jewish organization that is non-Orthodox. On the 5 towns, a very heavily Orthodox enclave, they had 700 people turn out for some AIPAC official. By changing the demographic base of their support, they're reflecting, number one, a larger change in the American Jewish community of who are the pro-Israel activists. And again, frankly, no other Jewish organization has given that kind of care and attention to it. 2, what it does mean, which I think speaks to Mark's point, is that AIPAC will have a balance between more liberal elements who are traditionally identified with conservative reform movements, and more conservative elements who are very comfortable with, with existing policy of the Netanyahu government. And that adds to AIPAC's effectiveness precisely by saying we represent the broader Jewish community and not one sector.
Right, but I would suggest that quite a bit of the liberal wing of AIPAC has actually moved to J Street.
Well, that remains to be demonstrated. I haven't seen that as yet.
Okay, you're hearing all this. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's distressing because it does sound that we've defaulted to the idea that what's most likely is that he'll do nothing with respect to the Middle East.
You don't want him to do nothing.
I don't want him to do nothing. I just
What
think
do
that
you want him to do?
I would love to see him, and was it Ken said, the art of the deal. I love that idea, that maybe that he thinks that he does have a role to play. But I do think the kind of role that we saw in the Obama and Kerry administration in particular was something that American Jews just hadn't seen before. And this is something this is something that Ken and I completely disagree on, because I think Jews looked at this and said, this is not even-handed. This appears browbeating, that we are seeing open public disavowals of this daylight, that there would never be daylight, that we are publicly going to disagree with Israel. We're publicly going to be criticizing the Israeli prime minister, and we're not going to be as openly critical about Palestinian intransigence. We're not. Why? Well, because they're pro-Palestinians, and they have a colonial power as their border, and that sensibility was present for 8 years, and I thought, frankly, Ken, I thought it was toxic. It was absolutely toxic, and there's no way that the story that you describe about the Jews of Chicago. Those are Jews that never went to synagogue. Those are Jews that don't really care in the same way.
That's very offensive.
No,
and not
but
true.
It's not true. It is that this idea that he came in. During the Gaza war, Ken. But everyone, myself, wanted to remind the president that before the 2008 election, he went to travel to Sderot, and he famously said, if my daughters ever had to sleep in this town and face such an existential threat, I would do everything in my power to protect them. But during Gaza, he couldn't stop by talking about disproportionate Israeli loss.
I think that's
he was obsessed with
who negotiated the end of the war?
Disproportionate Palestinian loss.
And who negotiated the end of the war? His Secretary of State.
I think what you saw in that case is that the Israelis realized, because of world condemnation, they couldn't finish the job.
Oh, I don't think they wanted to finish the job.
Well,
inside the Security Cabinet of Israel, actually Netanyahu and Bogi Ya'alon, the defense ministers, said we do not want to finish the job. There's no job to finish here.
I think that
and we need help. And the United States government came in and helped them negotiate a solution.
I think they felt that way because they saw what we saw on CNN
and
CNBC. So. They saw the world condemnation that Israel only has 6 dead and there's endless killing of Palestinian children. And by the way, during that period of time, it was Bill Clinton and to a certain extent Hillary Clinton, and to her credit, who were very open in saying, no, this is Hamas's fault. The blame, and this would never happen. President Obama would never have blamed Hamas. How could he possibly?
He's been incredibly critical of Hamas.
You're
rewriting history.
We're watching a very different drama here, Ken, because I did not see this. I saw Kerry mocking Israelis when he said pinpoint precision, that this is, and that we're trying to do pinpoint. He said, I think what Kerry's line is, oh, that's pinpoint. As if, how could you possibly kill any Palestinians in a war?
Yeah, I'm not going to defend every word of Kerry. I want to say what are the things here. There's a problem with the narratives and perspective. So the perspective that we're hearing is that the U.S. government has browbeaten the Israeli government and criticized everything they've done. And what do the Palestinians say? You come to the Middle East and you have General Allen do all this work, coordinate every little bit of a security plan with Israelis, and then you present us the Palestinians. You're so close to the Israelis. You coordinate everything with the Israelis, and then you bring us as if we're supposed to accept it. So yes, there's a lot of different narratives, a lot of different perspectives. And General John Allen spends months and months, one of the leading military leaders of the United States, who the President and the Secretary of State give to this project. And what do the Israelis call him? Delusional. After they've worked with all of the military in Israel. So, there's a lot of narratives here. I'm not condoning every step Kerry took or the president took, but I think their commitment to Israel's security and commitment and desire for peace was exemplary. I really do. So I just think this frontal attack on the Obama administration of 8 years, we're forgetting a lot of the good work that they did.
They blamed Israel.
They blamed Israel.
They blamed Israel, Ken. This is the part that you won't acknowledge. If you asked them if they were sitting here now, they would say, we could have achieved something, but it's Netanyahu's fault, it's the Israeli government's fault, it's the Israelis' fault.
Oh, I will agree with you that the Israeli government was not willing to do enough for a two-state solution. I totally agree with you.
What you mean is you agree with those who say
Yeah.
it's Israel's fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, not just
Yeah.
Israel's fault. See, I don't accept
You're
it's
not
just
troubled
Israel's
by
fault.
human shields. You're troubled by settlements.
I'm very troubled.
Human
I am troubled
shields
by
are
all of
okay.
it. I am troubled by all of it, Thane. And I think there's multiple sides to this conflict. Abbas came to the White House, and the president spoke to him, and Abbas wouldn't accept the plan. So I'm saying, pox on all their houses. But
And you know what criticism, yeah, that's a really good example, Ken. I do not remember at that time that the president openly criticized Abbas in the way that he did with Netanyahu and said, I can't believe I'm trying to give the Palestinians a homeland.
Well, how do I know about it? It was reported in the news. I'm not sure what...
It's hardly a secret that the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of the United States did not have a particularly cozy relationship. And frankly, that's quite unfortunate because that has been one aspect, not the only aspect, but it's been one critical aspect of the special U.S. Israel relationship. But any attempt, I think, in terms of where blame is to be cast, so to speak, there's one reason why you don't have a Palestinian state. You could have had one in 1947, you could have had one in 1980, certainly in 1999, 2005 with the Gaza disengagement, and 2008 with the Olmert Plan. And the answer to that is that each time, the answer was no.
No, the disengagement is a very unfair characterization. The disengagement, Sharon refused to coordinate with Abbas. This is on the record. Yossie Beilin and others at the time were pleading with him. He did not give the land to the Palestinian Authority. He said he didn't trust Abbas. It was Arafat's second in command. That was a mistake on Sharon's part. I agreed with the disengagement, but he didn't coordinate it with the Palestinians. He gave them the land and left. So leave that one out of your list.
Fair enough. I think that is debatable.
No, by the way, don't say fair enough.
You don't like that
No,
phrase.
that's definitely debatable.
Okay, I said it was
No,
debatable.
that's true what I'm telling you. I will send you the documentation afterwards.
Ken, I know what should have been done if you wanted a Palestinian state is set up an entity in Gaza, clean up the beaches, put up a big sign saying, let's show the world what we can do with a Palestinian state. Instead of doing that, you had daily rocket attacks on Sderot. But my point still...
I'm certainly not defending Hamas. I hope no one in this panel thinks
But
that's the role I'm playing here.
We understand. We understand.
But look, my point still remains is that if you're asking why is there no Palestinian state, it's never been because of Israeli intransigence on this. What it has, you can say the settlements are a problem, and that's what I said earlier, but they're not the problem in terms of obstructing a Palestinian state. The reason there's no Palestinian state is that each time it has been put on the table, and we can quarrel about the dates if you will, but each time it has been put on the table, the answer has been no. This has led many people to reach the conclusion that far more interested in are far less interested in the attainment of Palestinian sovereignty is the interest in the destruction of Israel. And that's, to me, is a critical part of the narrative. Now, where do you go from here in all this? My point has always been, and this relates to the settlement issue as well, is that let's not have any illusions about any quick two-state solution. But let's keep two principles in mind. Number one is that the two-state solution provides us with the best opportunity, as you mentioned earlier, not for a love-in, but rather to preserve Israel as a Jewish democracy. And two, that Israel should do nothing that pushes the two-state solution one or two steps further away. I think if you accept those two principles, you on the one hand are saying that blame needs to be put where it really is, which is Palestinian intransigence, and on the other hand saying that the American Jewish community, as pro-Israel advocates and supporters, recognize that Israel needs to maintain its commitment ultimately to a two-state solution. The Prime Minister gave that commitment in 2009. Regrettably, there's been no progress on it since then.
And you expect the Trump administration to do what?
Well, I said before, the Trump administration is unpredictable, and until we
So
have a
you don't
sense of
know
who's
yet?
people, I say we don't know.
Okay. You've been listening quietly. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that the previous presidents have all wanted to see a two-state solution, mostly for their own ego. They want to be the one that put the stamp on it. Bill Clinton wanted it. Bush wanted it. They all wanted it. I don't think that Trump's going to care that much. I think it's not going to be a major issue. I think that the two-state solution is not going to ever happen. I think demographics in Israel have changed. I think that the fact that they've tried so many times to offer it to the Palestinians. I mean, I'm hoping the textbooks are going to change, because otherwise we have another generation of hatred. I mean, the other issues, this was one of Boogie Ya'alon's major things. Let's change the textbooks. Let's put a map of Israel back into the Arab studies, so at least there can be some form of recognition instead of this brainwashing of children at the camps. So I'm hoping that the whole ethos is going to change, not that we're going to just get, okay, finally, Kerry went there, he wanted a two-state solution, Bibi didn't fix it, so Hillary's screaming at Bibi. I think that that's going to change. I think there's going to be a much more lower, a much more quieter atmosphere that goes on. I tended to agree what Thane felt historically, because I feel that's my historical perspective. Clearly, when it comes to Cairn, I would be, but so polar opposite that, you know, I wonder who he's associating with. You know, almost feel like saying.
What is your biggest objection to what he said?
I think he feels that Israel has failed the Palestinians, and I feel the Palestinians have failed the Jews.
Is Barbara right? Do you feel that Israel has failed the Palestinians?
No, I think Israeli leadership has failed Israel. I think that the issue of a Palestinian state, while I am sympathetic to the Palestinians' desire for a two-state solution, reflected in public opinion polls in Palestine, that 60%, despite everything that they've had to put up with, still want a Palestinian state. I think the Israeli government, the current leadership, has failed the Israeli people. I feel that very strongly. It was a very contested election in 2015. Netanyahu managed to cobble together a coalition again, and he's going forward. So it's not a matter of failing the Palestinians, it's failing the Israeli people.
Do you feel the same way?
No. I think that the Israelis, yes, a majority of Israelis want a two-state solution, but the majority of Israelis live in Israel, and they see the world clearly. And they see Hamas, and they see Abbas, and they say, who the hell is our partner here? Why in the world would we actually imagine that we have some sustainable way of living in peace with people who continue to chant from the river to the sea, who continue to wear chains around their neck for the houses that they're never going to get back, who continue to invoke the word occupation as if Israelis have no connection to that land, who support all disavowals of any connection that Israel has to Jerusalem? That's what Israel's looking at. Look at our neighbors. Why would we trust them when they don't acknowledge our existence, and they continue to invoke in their hearts and in their charters a one-state plan where there are no Jews that live here?
Using the phrase they here is terribly unuseful.
But it's true.
No, it's not. It's absolutely not. And I'm going to tell you one story, an uplifting story. I came back from Israel on Monday, and one of the things I did is I visited Al-Quds University in East Jerusalem, in Abu Dis. It took me 45 minutes to get there. It used to be a 10-minute drive. But there's a wall. Some people know how to build walls. I drove around the wall with my cab driver and went to Al-Quds University, 13,000 students of Arabs of all ilk, women dressed in every possible way, from burqa to jeans and uncovered hair. I visited the medical school there because they have 1,000 students in the medical school, 65% of which are female. And they've now negotiated a deal with Hadassah University Medical School, so that Hadassah University Hospital, so that they can do rotations and residencies of the Palestinian students. These are Palestinians en masse who want peace, who want to live at peace with Israel, they want to have their doctors mentored by Israeli doctors. So this use of the expression they. Yes, there are suicide bombers out of Palestine, but there's also leadership in the Palestinian territories that very much want peace,
but
and the
Israelis
Israelis need to engage.
Leadership of the Palestinians. Why aren't any of these students running for president? Why aren't they objecting that Abbas has never had another election?
Okay, Women Wage Peace just had a whole march of hope, and Palestinian Wage. People always ask me, where's the Palestinian Peace Now movement? They marched over the Sukkot holiday. They marched from Jericho as far as they could until they hit a place where they could no longer march.
Is that the majority view among Palestinians?
Yes.
Most Palestinians actually support what they think?
There have been studies done by
that Peter
pollsters.
Beinart. It's the same studies that Peter Beinart comes on this show and says, I've got studies.
By Palestine. Well, what do you want? You're asking me a question. I'm giving you facts.
But then why is there no improvement in relationships?
Because
Why is because only because of Israel?
I said both. I said both. Palestinians are desperately in need. Both peoples are being failed by their leaderships. That's the point I put on the table.
Okay, is Israel being failed by its leadership?
I don't necessarily disagree with the issue about a Jewish democracy. I don't at all disagree with the issue of a Jewish democracy. But I think what's missing in the point here, Ken, is that, and Peter Beinart, is that what's missing is what Israel is up against.
Right.
What is the context of the Middle East?
Exactly.
In the ideal world, there should be a two-state solution. In the ideal world, Israel should make all efforts to secure it.
Is
But it
Israeli leadership failing these Israeli people?
No, I don't think it's failing. I think it's presenting Israeli society as Israeli society will be confronted with long-range issues of what is the meaning of Jewish state? Is it a democracy? Can you have both a Jewish state and a democracy? Those issues are being untended. In that sense, benign neglect, if you will, and I don't think they should remain untended. I think, frankly, it's an issue of the entire Jewish people. But on the other hand, I say in terms of day-to-day policy, in terms of what's actually happening, take a look at the context of what Israel's up against.
Who's Yossie
think
Beilin? Who's Yossie
Wait,
Beilin?
Kenny,
Who is Yossie Beilin?
Who is he? Former deputy foreign minister, former minister of justice,
Left or right?
left,
Far left.
far left.
So Yossie
Setting up
Beilin comes on JBS,
Yeah.
and he says, the reason there is no two-state solution is that Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want one. What would you say to Yossie Beilin?
I'd say that number one, the prime minister gave his Bar Ilan speech in 2009 upholding a two-state solution. It is the responsibility of Israelis such as yourself, Mr. Beilin, that you need to hold him accountable and keep on repeating that and say that this is what you promised. We require action that moves towards that.
Do you believe that Netanyahu has not tried to implement the two-state solution?
I think in the ideal world, he would he'd stand by the Bar Ilan speech. He's lost faith in it. And
That's my question for
has he
Steve
not,
Mark.
Has he not tried? Has he not come to the United Nations
Yeah.
and said in the General Assembly, I will meet with Mahmoud Abbas anywhere, anytime?
yeah, I think that's
Okay.
yeah.
And what did he not do?
The settlement issue is a terrible signal in terms of
Is he building new settlements?
well,
Armona.
the number of settlers has grown
I
exponentially.
didn't ask you that.
but what about the 10-month moratorium that he?
Okay,
Why could-
you have a
Yeah,
question.
you're starting to focus on this, and this is my question when I say he's failing Israeli people. You said something I thought which is exactly right, the tzav hasha'ah, the thing that we need to do now, and that is not preclude a two-state solution when the time is right. They have illegal settlements, the kind of settlements that actually Barbara referred to, Hilltop
Hilltop.
Youth, and the Israeli government has petitioned not to have to take them down. They're viewed as being illegal. That's understood. And there's a particular one right now that is supposed to be evacuated and closed. The defense minister, Bogi Ya'alon, planned to do so. And the Supreme Court has told the government to do it. And this Israeli government is actually, as much as possible, pushing off any need to take down illegal settlements. To me, that is a show of bad faith. When we talk again about is
Can
the
they
Israeli
take them
government
down
is
often?
the Israeli government doing what it can to at least keep the option of a two-state solution open? I think that's what Steve was referring to.
They
And that's
do
my
take
question.
them down.
Do you think
They
that he's
take the
doing
hill-
everything he can?
I think
And
I
I
agree with
agree
you.
I
There's
agree
no
with
excuse
Ken on
for not
that.
They
doing it.
take the hilltop settlements down often. The settlers sometimes go back and rebuild them. So it is a battle between the settlers and the government. But the government
Who's
goes in
stronger,
and
the
takes
Israeli
them out.
army or the settlers?
You know, if they go in the middle of the night and pitch a
No,
tent,
I'm
what do you
sorry.
do?
There's a Supreme Court case I just put on the table here that the government refuses to
But
implement.
I want
That's
to
a very
switch to the
bad mark
UNESCO.
for the Israeli
I
government.
want to switch to the UNESCO.
Why?
What just happened? Because I feel that why are the Palestinians not going again? If they so want peace, these wonderful Palestinians, why don't they go to the United Nations and say about UNESCO? Hold on a second. There are connections. The old city, the Western Wall. Why don't they go? But do they come up and say no? They're only too happy to have a whole political vote as if it was a majority vote.
That is a powerful argument.
I
isn't
totally
it?
agree. I think the system is so broke right now. That's why I said the Palestinian people are failing, leadership are failing their own people. This is a great example. They feel they can't get anywhere with the Netanyahu government, so now they're, if you accuse expression of parenting, they're acting out in public. They're going to different forums and making nuisances of
Okay.
themselves. And I agree, totally unproductive. Our movement came out against the UNESCO resolution, made it very clear we thought it was misguided, incorrect, wrong.
It's just
Agreed.
typical, though. It's typical of a people that are not interested in nation building. And they've proved this time and time again.
But I just gave you a great example of
when Arafat
nation
walked
building.
away from the last peace deal before Bill Clinton's the culmination of Oslo, he walked away with, what, 97% on the table. Why? Because I think he really looked and he says, I can't sell this to my people. My people don't want to live.
How many years ago was
they
that?
Don't, and then what
16.
has, right, and what stopped that? Why can't that have been revived? Abbas was offered the same thing
And what
by
happened? Hold on.
Omer.
And what happened? What
Omer
happened?
offered them the same thing.
And what happened? What was Olmer's situation when he made that offer? Was he indicted? Was he under indictment?
Almost.
So you're,
Almost.
Exactly.
But
That
but
doesn't,
Abbas
that doesn't
had time.
explain the
That
failure
doesn't
to
ex-
respond. In other words,
exactly.
you put the onus on the other side. If you guys can't come through because your prime
It's not
minister
because you're
is going
right.
to jail, that's your problem. But our responsibility is to say this is the best solution possible, and we will make the necessary steps towards making it
they're
happen.
much more the Palestinian leadership and the people not the people you ran into and that university.
ran into.
But the people who
It's
the people
largest
are
university in
not.
Jerusalem.
Yeah, and they're not interested in nation building. They're not, because
totally
if
agree.
they
Have you
were,
been to have you been to
if
Rawabi?
they were, we wouldn't be in this position for decade after decade.
All right. Unfortunately, the clock has grabbed us. But I'm going to ask you now. You've said it, but I want to make sure the audience understands. Trump administration, good or bad for Israel?
Excellent for Israel.
Good or bad for Israel?
Right now, I'd say yes. Unpredictable until we get a sense of his personnel.
Okay. Good or bad for Israel?
No, because they're not going to promote a two-state solution.
Good or bad for Israel?
It will be definitely better than the Obama administration.
Okay. There you have it. 4, obviously, bright, intelligent, and tremendously caring Jews giving different positions and different perspectives. What we've hoped this discussion does is give you food for thought and also maybe help clarify some of your own thinking. My appreciation. Barbara, thank you so much. Steve, it's always wonderful. And Ken, thank you for being here. And I love you so much. These are 4 fabulous individuals, and what a privilege it is for me to be able to present them to you. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to anything our guests have said or that I've said on this edition of L'Chaim. Please email me or write me or post on our Facebook page or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from many of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'Chaim, my friends, to life.
L'Chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.